I'm Dash. I'm the founder of Small Outside, based in UK. And to be honest, I enjoy technology. I enjoy systems thinking. I care about sustainability, and those are the things I'm trying to bring together within Small Outside. And you'll hear a lot about that. So I'm really through Small Outside trying to do two simple things. One is connect change makers who are trying to make a difference and want to take real action. So that comes through a community approach. So community building is one key pillar. And it's about purpose-led individuals. This is not a network of uh, people who don't care or salespeople who are trying to make a quick sale. The other side is the ventures. So having a community is one thing. People can connect, make a difference the way they want to. But quite often you want to connect with people and collaborate in order to get good ideas off the ground. And they have to be done in a sustainable way. And what I mean here is, of course, they need to be impact focused. So they have triple bottom line goals of people, planet, and prosperity. But they need to sustain themselves financially as well. So venture approach is what makes sense to me. So those are the two key areas for Small Outside. The community side and the venture side, they are interrelated. On the community side, I'm a great believer of open innovation. You can have a couple of people, a few founders coming together and coming up with an idea, and that's great. But open innovation has been known to create more well-rounded ideas where you actually achieve a better product market fit, you achieve a greater innovation by tapping into the wisdom of crowds. So that's what a community provides when you engage with a good, well-aligned community. That's what you get, more well-rounded solutions. But it also becomes the medium, so to say, for well-aligned individuals to come together and build something meaningful. So it becomes a talent pool, if you want to use old parlance, and also the support, as in you can build ventures, you can lock yourself in a room, get a startup off the ground, but quite often the greatest challenge is finding your early adopters, finding someone who will help build it into a well-rounded solution. And what better than well-aligned individuals to do that? And on the other side of the equation is ventures. So they are designed to create opportunities back for the community. So it's not just about taking, but it's about giving back as well. And those opportunities are either in the form of entrepreneurship, people who, not everyone's bitten by the entrepreneurship bug. Most of us on this call are, but most people are happy with jobs. They want to use their skills for a greater purpose. And that's what this can create. The ventures can create well-aligned opportunities where people can use their skills in order to do something good. And the last one is really the outcomes, as in without ventures, without venturizing, which I know is not an English word. I hope it gets into the English dictionary at some point. But if you have conversations, that's great. You feel nice, warm, and fuzzy. But if they don't translate into action, something that can sustain itself and grow, it's pointless. So really, that's the other aspect of the ventures. And then the ventures are of two types. There are the core ventures, and then there are the focus ventures. So core ventures are the ones that create the key building blocks for all ventures. So things like building a community, which we are going to talk about today in Third Space, is a core venture. It's not a venture which will just create and kind of offload somewhere or get rid of it. It is critical to the operation, and having a community will benefit many other ventures that want to get involved in these kind of venture ideas. Also, there are other ventures there within the core venture, one around finance. How do we get a cooperative model into financing so that those initial funds can be generated, but also create value back. So those are the kinds of core ventures, just to give you a flavor. And then the focus ventures can be any venture that creates a positive impact. It doesn't have to be setting up green energy infrastructure or anything. It can be even simple ideas that create some positive impact. But those are self-contained entities which ride on the core ventures infrastructure, if that kind of makes sense. And ideally, what we would want to do is connect and integrate those focused ventures. So yes, they are benefiting from the core ventures, but they're also benefiting from each other. So that's the vision. for the focus ventures. Today's focus is, of course, on the core ventures, which we'll talk about. And then there are different roles. And the slide, oh, the font size doesn't bother you, but I see it as a usual Venn diagram with many different pieces of the puzzle coming together. At the heart of it, for any venture, are the venture builders, but they're usually small numbers. So we think even 3 to 5 people who are willing to commit time on a regular basis. So 20 hours per week feels about right. And these are venture builders who are not necessarily dropping everything and getting onto the ventures. They have a day job that they worry about that pays the bills, but it also creates the opportunity to use the evenings, weekends, whatever entrepreneurs find every spare minute for their dreams. So it's created with that model in mind. On the other side, even if you get 3 or 5 good people together, they will always have a gap. There will be a gap in their understanding of how to solve these things. They may not have the right connections in place. And that's where the network comes in, which is the industry experts. So these are people within the community who have the skills and have the connections, and they like the venture ideas, then they come forward and support the venture builders. Without investment, it doesn't make sense. No venture will really scale. Of course, you can always start with some skunk works and things like that, but that's where ethical investment comes in. And it's very consciously ethical. We're not trying to appease and appeal to people who are looking for 10x growth. In fact, when someone knocks on my door with just that kind of conversation, I quickly cut it out because they are just misaligned to what we are trying to do. And the ethical investors, really their initial goal, as in ideally everything would be self-funding, but their main value comes at the pre-seed stage when they're willing to take risks. Of course, they want returns. They want instead of 10x, they're probably looking for 5x returns and 5x impact. Now, the ethical investors can come in different forms, like government grants, philanthropic grants, or whatever investments as they or patient capital is what I came across recently. So those are the kinds of funds we are talking about here, and of course crowdfunding, which again is a great measure or great medium for things that are trying to do good. Generally, people are more willing to crowdfund. So those are all forms of ethical investment. We then have the trusted partners, which is how Gavin and Dennis are on this call. So the trusted partners, there's recognition, and when we did the last pilot of a similar kind with Right Piper, it became clear that we needed some specialist skills, or at least organizations that would take specific pieces of work and deliver them. So they come in the form of trusted partners. And they get involved from the early stages of the venture building process. So they're putting their skin into the game. We're not talking about just finding someone and just offloading work. We are talking about engaging people who really are willing to put their skin into the game for a reward, and who see their involvement as a cost of sale, essentially, because once it's funded, the revenues can then follow. And last but not the least, the founders associates, their role is most critical. So founders associates form the core of Small Outside. So these are a small group of people who come together to get this whole engine working. And at the moment, our focus is, of course, the third space venture. But on other ventures, what we realized from Right Piper trial was we needed a sponsor, someone who would oversee the entire build activity and even the conceptualizing activity. And the founders associate play a role at that stage by overseeing, guiding, keeping people on point as well, just making sure progress is being made. They stand to gain equity in the Small Outside limited company, the company entity. So that's how that is being built. And again, the commitment there is 20 hours per week. So that's really the different roles. And it's important you understand how these are and where you think you fit or you don't fit, but hopefully it gives you a view of how this is structured. And yes, you can build startups, you can shoot from the hip, but having a structured method obviously helps. It there's a high failure rate in startups. It's fully understandable, but if you have a structured approach, your chances of success improve. And this is the method that we have slowly over the years come down to, which is the first stage is of course ideation that can happen within a community setting, or it can just be a moment when some bright spark comes to someone's mind and they are willing to co-create it. That's the most important thing. So ideation can happen anywhere. Once that's happened, the next stage is to mobilize a group of people who, as in on today's call, this group felt they could do something with third space as a venture, but that's the activity that mobilization phase covers. And at that point, this is where we are finding the core team of 3 to 5 people. Third space is slightly different because it's a core venture. It can be slightly more. And then the next stage really is what's going to happen in the coming weeks is refining it. You can start with, I came across someone who said he calls it the green dot theory. You start building a green dot, and what actually turns up at the end is actually a red square, and that tends to be the right answer. So the refinement process follows agile, sort of lean launchpad approach. So you start with an idea and then you iterate through it over a period of time, about 8 weeks, to come up with something that is more well-rounded and more likely to succeed in the marketplace. So it's not about building the software, it's about, or software or the solution, it's about discovery. It's about customer discovery, getting a better potential product market fit. It's that kind of focus area over there. Again, time boxed very deliberately because if ideas fail or if ideas don't have traction, it's better to bin them and move on to something else. Third space will probably persevere because it's one of the core building blocks. Ideally, at the end of that 8 week would be a funding question with ideally investors coming in during that 8 week period with a decision of a yes, no to invest by the end of 8th week. If that does not happen, then and not all ventures need immediate funding. Some of them can start with just a small group, but where a funding is absolutely needed, if we cannot get it by the end of 8th week, we will try for another 3 months. If we can't get it, that just goes into cold storage. Maybe the idea was not right. Maybe the reach was not right. There can be various reasons. Maybe the team wasn't quite right. So there can be several reasons why someone may not fund, but that's also a great feedback mechanism. We wouldn't necessarily chuck the idea away. We would probably put it in cold storage and resurrect it. And only if the idea is funded, we go into build activities, unless the idea is simple enough where it can be built. So Tudor is championing 3 buttons, which was an idea that came out of Third Space. It's a simple app, can be knocked off over the weekend. So that's something which we'll just get on with. We won't go through the whole process, but generally speaking, something substantial would go through a bit of a structured activity. And the important bit is fail fast. We don't want to waste time on things that are not likely to make sense to the world, that they don't have a financial backbone to support themselves, and those ideas are not worth investing our time and energy on. And of course, if all that, and the build stage, by the way, just to complete that, this is where the community comes into play again, because they provide you with your alpha trial users, beta trial users, your early market, the feedback, and all those things. And only when it is truly well-rounded, we go into the proper launch. So that's a structure we are proposing. That's what we want to trial. This came out of a last trial of Wright Piper, which we put in the bin, by the way, and it's gone into cold storage. It will be resurrected, but it was too big a venture to take through the process for where we stand today. So Third Space is a core venture, and over here we are not getting co-creators from outside. The founders, associates will themselves co-create this venture. And the first 2 weeks, we all come from various backgrounds. We may not necessarily be aligned. One session like today's is not going to achieve a true sync on the method. So we are talking about lean launchpad. Now that may not be, if you're not in the startup business, you may not have full appreciation of what that is. So the first 2 weeks is about really getting up to speed on the tools and the concept, and even as a team, just aligning ourselves. Uh, again, this was also a learning from Wright Piper, where even in week 6, we were still explaining basic concepts to people, saying, "Oh yeah, this is what a business model canvas is." And it's too late if you spend 6 weeks and people haven't really got up to speed. So those 2 weeks are important. But the real core activity is the concept refinement, which happens from 12th June to 6th August, and that happens in a weekly sprint format, which I'll cover. If you look at third space from a core value proposition perspective, you may have seen the strategizer value proposition canvas before. We've adapted it for triple bottom line organizations, which also adds the concerns aspect, which strategizer doesn't cover, because it's a single bottom line tool, if you like, and it doesn't bother about what people care about almost. So if we look at the jobs that people are trying to do, and there is a language that this tool uses, so if it doesn't make sense, this is what we'll cover during the 2 weeks. But jobs are typically, what is it that the person's really trying to do? They are trying to network with like-minded individuals. That's what they really want to do in a community kind of setting. And what are the pain points with the current solutions? Mainly, social media is what people kind of go to, or meetups, which are also a kind of social media-ish version. But they are quite exhausting and they're quite unhelpful. The number of people you have to say no to before you find one gem is mind-boggling. The wastage rate almost over there. And the things they care about, certainly, or people who we are targeting, are people who care about sustainability. They are worried about greenwashes. They care about the climate. They care about something positive coming out of their life, their work, their purpose. And again, is typically not something people are looking for. So they're not looking to go and build ventures. But if that happens and that then creates some job opportunities for them or financial opportunities for them, that's the gain as far as they are concerned. But when they are networking, that's not the primary reason they do. So that's on the left-hand side is the customer profile. On the right-hand side is really an answer to each of those boxes. So the product or service that we're building here is no pretense networking on shared passions. And it's something which came out quite clearly as part of the pilot that we are running in LinkedIn. Of course, I think people have got exhausted out of the conversations that happened there. It's gone slightly quiet. But what came out of the surveys was people want to meet people. They don't want to sit and talk about a topic and get exhausted from it or get constant notifications. But certainly they want to reach out to people who they can simply pick up the phone and say, look, we are in the same network. Can you help me? And by the way, I'm here to help you do so and so. These are my this is the value I can provide. So that's the kind of network we want to build as the solution, third space. In terms of pain relievers, relevant discussions and connections. It's not about just connecting with any Tom, Dick, and Harry. It's really, if there's a shared passion, it is more likely to be a meaningful connection. So that's what we are focusing on. Given the concern around sustainability and its rising concern among the population, our focus is only on actionable impact. So that's what we are focusing on. And the last one is, while it may not be a conscious thing, the gain creator we have is an opportunity to co-create ventures. So that's the core value proposition. We can expand on this. Typically, you would go through a very structured exercise to really define it. But today's session is really a straw man that I'm putting forward to align minds, and then we will go through it in a more structured way. So the way it's been envisaged, there always will be a free offering. As in the whole idea is there's a part of it is a mission in itself of connecting change makers, which is the Passion Network will always be free. The reason for premium came up is firstly, we saw some great early signs of people wanting to benefiting from something like this, but also the burden of running a community is quite significant. The amount of time I was spending in the last 4 weeks, uh, yes, I was enjoying it, I have to admit, but it has to be funded eventually. Not necessarily me doing it, but whoever is participating, they need to be paid for their work, which is where the premium offering comes in. But the premium offering can add greater value. So passion will always be free. You should be able to connect with 150 people who share your passion. That's the vision. But then we also have a life. We still have our first space and the second space, which is home and work. And connecting with the right people in the industry, in your own industry, connecting with the right people in your own expertise areas and in your own location are very important. So those are additional circles or networks that people can have as premium members. Priority on venture opportunities. We are looking to create opportunities. Now, if you're a third space premium member, then naturally you would be in front of the queue because you bought into this vision and you're willing to even put some money forward for it. There would be opportunities to co-create. So you could be collaborating on ventures. You could be providing fractional service on ventures for equity or as pay for service. Or you could be even investing into those ventures, or you may be a trusted partner. So those are premium members would naturally be prioritized. The other aspect which I keep getting a lot of people come forward and they say, "Oh yeah, I like what you're doing, but I've got my pet project. Can you incubate it in your area, if you like, or in your space?" And my answer usually is no, because we tried this last year and we concluded purely supporting solopreneurs who don't want to share out the benefits of support that they receive is not a good model. So, but they are still trying to make a difference. So with Third Space Premium, we'll be able to provide support to them because they are participating in the premium model. And there will be other such benefits. Now, this is not necessarily the perfect list. This is what we need to discover in the 8 weeks. And identify things that matter, things that people care about. Next one is, this is my take on how a refinement happens. So you start, and I like using these picture of a square becoming a circle eventually. But you start with something which is very crude formed, as in what I'm sharing today is pretty crude. But you iterate through it. You use a very agile approach on a weekly basis, take it out. Customer discovery is very important. You start with this hypothesis, things that I've said today. I could easily reach out to a few people and say, look, this is what we are trying to build. And just those conversations will create very useful input, which then shapes the next week's iteration and the version that goes out. And then again, it gets validated. But every time you iterate, you are adding one more dimension and slowly you're building it to a rounded solution. Now, of course, in an 8-week period, you cannot truly get a rounded solution. So something that is good enough, that's close enough to a round is good enough for us. If we can build it, if it is an easy tool like 3 buttons, for example, and that can easily be done within 8 weeks and to a fully rounded solution. But good enough is good enough sometimes, and that's what we want to achieve by 6th of August for Third Space. After that, I put the funding icon there. I'm not convinced we need to even get funding to get started, because building community solutions are easy. I'm happy to shell some money towards it. Ready solutions. Dennis, you already offered us circle.so space in your tenant. So there are things we can get started with. And once it really gets traction, the biggest problem with communities, online communities, is engagement. People come in, but they don't engage after that. So if we can prove, then we can move to mighty networks or circle.so spaces, those kind of solutions. So I'm not convinced we need a lot of money. We do need a bit, but that's easy to find. And that's what I see as or I'm proposing as the 8-week refinement model with a target of 6th August. So the next step really is alignment and sync. We tried this on LinkedIn. We were on Discord. We were on Slack before. Discord was working really well for very, very well engaged members. But those who were like not truly engaged were more comfortable with LinkedIn. So we moved to LinkedIn, and that's created good results. But for real working with multi-threaded discussions, for jumping on calls and all that, frankly, Discord is much better. So that's what we'll use. The first 2 weeks is really what we've called the Crowd Academy. So we'll use that kind of a model, which is an inverted classroom model, where the topics are identified, which we know is the Lean Launchpad's methodology, which we want to get up to speed. But really, the topics are there, and we exchange between ourselves our own understandings to create a well-rounded and well-aligned view of how ventures can be built. And it doesn't have to be just Lean Launchpad. We've got a few serial entrepreneurs here, people who've done this before, who are funding right now. There may be other ideas that come into that process, which we can all align on and then work through.